Continuing right along with the trend we've been on over the last few videos, today we're moving on to the 2018 NBA Draft Lottery. Basically, we've been going back and looking at previous draft classes, and with the power of hindsight, we're giving out grades for each selection based on how they've worked out so far for those teams. When drafts go down, there tends to be narratives about which picks are better than others, but you can never really know for sure until the players start playing games and producing, so after a few years a lot can change. The 2018 NBA draft class was one of the most talented draft classes in recent history, but when you look back you realize not every team came away satisfied with their selections, as you'll see in this video. Before we start though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. Starting with the first pick, the Phoenix Suns selected Deandre Ayton, and the grade here is a B. When the draft went down, Ayton's physical prowess and skill around the basket posed an incredibly intriguing skill set, leading some to believe he could be the next dominant big man. Now, 4 years later, Ayton has proven to be a good player who performs well in his role and produces like an above-average center while playing solid defense, but he's not an all-star caliber player necessarily, and especially in this draft class, that's not enough to fully justify being taken number 1 overall. The Suns were very hesitant to give him a max contract extension this offseason, and even though he's now back with the team, the situation there is still kind of awkward. Next, with the second pick, the Sacramento Kings selected Marvin Bagley, and the grade here is a D-. The selection is as close as it gets to being an F grade, but even though the situation surrounding Bagley and the Kings was never ideal, and the context of who he was drafted over makes it sting even more, he's not a draft bust by any means. His role on the Kings in his time there was all over the place, sometimes being the starting power forward, sometimes playing a minimal role off the bench, and at times he was even out of their rotation altogether. Then they ended up trading him to Detroit in exchange for Josh Jackson, Trey Lyles, and some uninspiring draft capital, so overall it was a pretty poor return on investment for the second overall pick. Next, with the third pick, the Dallas Mavericks traded up to select Luka Doncic, and the grade here is an easy A+. Luka is a generational prospect who many were expecting to be drafted first overall at the time, and now 4 years later, both the Suns and the Kings are kicking themselves for passing on him. Quite frankly, we've never seen someone his age produce at the level that he's been producing at so quickly, and every year he gets better and better. He averaged about 28 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists per game last season, while leading the Mavericks to the conference finals. He's going to be an MVP candidate for years to come, and should go down as an all-time great by the time his career is over, so trading up to get him was the best decision they could have possibly made. Next up, with the fourth pick, the Memphis Grizzlies selected Jaren Jackson Jr, and the grade here is an A-. Jaren came into the league with a raw skill set, but the hope was that his defensive potential could blossom into an all-defense caliber player who could operate as a pick-and-roll man and space the floor with his jumper offensively, and this past season, he pretty much was exactly that. He was named first team all-defense last season, he averaged a solid 16 points per game, and I'll admit his shooting efficiency does need to improve, but he shot better in the postseason, which helped the team a lot. He's an integral part of the team that just had the second best record in the NBA, and was obviously a strong pick in hindsight. Next, with the fifth pick, the Atlanta Hawks traded down to select Trae Young, and the grade here is another A+. Trae Young and Luka Doncic will always be compared to each other because of the fact that they were traded for each other on draft night, but the fact of the matter is that they're both unbelievably talented superstar players through 4 seasons. Trae is the engine that makes the Hawks' offense go, creating points at an elite rate, while averaging 28 points and 10 assists per game. His ball handling is so crisp and tight, so he gets to his spots with ease, he keeps defenders on their toes with his deep shooting range, and even improved his shooting efficiency this past season to take another step forward. Next, with the sixth pick, the Orlando Magic selected Mo Bamba, and the grade here is a C. Bamba was a prospect at the time of the draft who most acknowledged was a few years away from contributing consistently, but the hope at the time was that his raw skill set and unbelievable physical tools could develop into a Rudy Gobert-esque player. Well, 4 years later, Bamba is a pretty good shot blocker, but overall, the impact that he provides is that of a role player at best. Up next with the 7th pick, the Chicago Bulls selected Wendell Carter Jr., and the grade here is a B. Carter came into the league as a guy ready to produce from the get-go, but his development took some time from there. He's a skilled big man with good defensive instincts and gives you solid offensive production, but during his 3rd season in Chicago, they traded him to Orlando in exchange for Nikola Vucevic, who at the time was an all-star. Since his arrival in Orlando, Carter has become a steady rock for the team, putting up about 15 points and 10 rebounds per game, and is a core member of the team's plan moving forward. Next, with the 8th pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers selected Collin Sexton, and the grade here is a B+. Sexton was always a guard who played with a score-first play style, and through 3 seasons in the league became one of the best young scoring talents there was in the NBA. In his 3rd year, he averaged about 24 points, while shooting 48% from the field and 37% from 3, but then last season, he suffered an injury that held him out of almost the entire season, and since then, his situation has become a little bit weird. At the moment, Sexton is still an unsigned free agent, and while I am certain that he will eventually sign somewhere, the fact that his stock has become as low as it is has shocked me a little bit. I still believe in his talent a ton, but we need an NBA team to do the same for him to get back on track. Next, with the 9th pick, the New York Knicks selected Kevin Knox, and the grade here is an F. Knox had the look of a potentially dominant scoring talent despite being a bit inconsistent and raw at the time, but unfortunately the reality of what he has become is the worst case scenario. Knox consistently ranked as one of the worst and least efficient players in the entire NBA amongst the guys that were actually getting minutes, and at this point he's looking like a complete draft bust. He's now on the Detroit Pistons looking for one last chance, but he'll need to really turn things around if he wants to last in the league. Up next with the 10th pick, the Suns traded up to draft Mikal Bridges, and the grade here is an A-. As we get further down the lottery, the likelihood of landing star talent tends to diminish, but if you can get an elite role player, that's a pretty big win, and that's exactly what the Phoenix Suns got here. Bridges is arguably the best 3-and-D player in the NBA right now, having finished as the runner-up in the Defensive Player of the Year race last season, while averaging about 14 points per game. His perimeter defense is truly top-notch, he's a reliable spot-up shooter, and his ability to create for himself is improving to at least where he can use it every now and then, so looking back, this was great value. Next, with the 11th pick, the Los Angeles Clippers traded to select Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and the grade here is an A. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was arguably the biggest steal in the draft this year, and after starting off in a reserved role off the bench as a rookie for the Clippers, he ended up the year as a starter when they made the playoffs and helped them make that run to get there. After the season, the Clippers traded him to Oklahoma City as the main chip of a huge package that they sent out in exchange for Paul George, and in Oklahoma City, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has become a borderline all-star, so the trade has worked out well for both sides involved. Next, with the 12th pick, the Charlotte Hornets selected Miles Bridges, and the grade here is a C. I'm only here to talk about basketball on the channel, but unfortunately the things that Bridges has done off the court seem likely to affect the rest of his career. He was finally starting to emerge as a borderline star talent last season, and now there's a chance that he might be out of the league for good because of his actions. He's currently an unsigned free agent, and the legal proceedings will be going on for a while, so I really don't know what else to grade this. Next, with the 13th pick, the Clippers selected Jerome Robinson, and the grade here is an F. Robinson was viewed at the time as a reach, and barely anybody labeled him as lottery talent when the draft went down. And now 4 years later, he's a G League player who has yet to even make a significant mark at the NBA level. And finally, the last pick of the lottery was Michael Porter Jr. by the Denver Nuggets, and the grade here is an A-. MPJ was drafted with known back issues that delayed the start of his career, but when he got on the court, the promising scoring talent everyone knew he had shined through. 2 seasons ago, he averaged an incredibly efficient 19 points per game, but then last year, his back got re-injured and set his career back again. I'm willing to give the Nuggets a good grade for this pick because when drafting in the middle of the first round, taking risks on talent like this is much more worth it, but there is legitimate injury concern that will be floating over Porter's head likely for the rest of his career, so this upcoming season is a big one for him. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below how you would grade these selections from 4 years ago. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.